mold, it can be quite devastating, not just, to your bank account, but to your health, to the health of your family, to the health of your pets. So how big is the mold problem? I've put together some statistics for you to understand. This is not just some esoteric problem that affects people you don't know. Check out these numbers from researchers. According to EPA surveys of U.S. buildings, 85% of buildings had past water damage and 45% have current leaks. A study of over 12,000 homes in 24 U.S. and Canadian cities revealed that 50% had mold or dampness. And a European study found that 1 in 6 homes had mold or dampness. Now in the U.S., 3.8 million people reported mold according to a 2021 Census Bureau survey. So it's not a small problem. And what about mold in the military? Years ago, our military housing was outsourced by the DoD to virtual slumlords, people who have contracts to take care and maintenance the homes, but don't do a very good job. As a matter of fact, they've been brought up to Congress a number of times. They've been fined. They've been found guilty of hiding records. They've been found guilty of falsifying documents and not actually doing the maintenance work. And our soldiers are suffering at home because of mold. Look at some of these numbers. Mold is the #1 housing issue that military families face, according to Gene Kaufman, the executive director and board chair of the Safe Military Housing Initiative. A 2019 DoD report for Congress found that mold encompassed 61% of Marine Corps complaints and 29% of Navy complaints. In 2023, there were at least 4,500 reports of mold in Air and Space Force privatized housing. More than 20,000 mold-related work orders in Army buildings since 2022. And the military keeps more detailed records, but declined to provide them when they were requested by the Project on Government Oversight. In other words, the mold problem in the military is far worse than what we know, and it's bad. And then there's mold in college dorms. According to a report put together by national remediation expert Michael Rubino, news sources report serious mold issues in at least 145 different college campus dorms between 2018 and 2023. There's also mold in grade schools. A 2020 U.S. Governmental Accountability Office report found that half of the schools it investigated had HVAC leaks or condensation leading to mold growth. So mold is in our buildings, it's in our schools, it's in our kids' college dorms, it's in our military. There's even reports of mold and mold issues in hospitals and surgical centers across the U.S. Mold is a huge problem. It is, in my opinion, the biggest health issue that we face because air quality is one of the fundamental tenets to good health. And if we're breathing in mold and mycotoxins and other microbial debris from water-damaged materials, it's going to affect our health tremendously. Now, if you look at this research study on how common is mold, this was published in 2022. The National Institute for Occupational Safety, NIOSH, and OSHA state that 50% of buildings in the U.S. are water damaged. Now, why does that all matter? Because mold is here. A lot of people say mold is common, mold is everywhere, and yes, it's true. Mold is God's great equalizer. It's what returns things back to the earth. It recycles and chews through organic material, makes them back into dirt. However, when you're living in concentrated mold or when you're in small spaces where mycotoxins are aerosolized and concentrated, the poison effect of these chemicals can be quite life-threatening. And if you look at this slide here, NIOSH and OSHA both report that at least 50% of buildings in the U.S. are water damaged. So what does all this equate to? Mold is a major problem, an epidemic problem, and mold is not benign. A lot of doctors will tell you that if you're not allergic to mold, that it's not a problem, but the reality is mold exposure can cause tremendous health detriment, and that's what the purpose of this video is. Now I'm going to go through the research-based symptoms of mold toxicity so that if you suffer with these things, maybe, just maybe, it'll turn your attention to investigating the potential possibility that your home may have a mold issue or that your car or your work may have a mold issue. And once you know, you can address it you can deal with it, and you can recapture your health. So let's dive in. Okay, before we get into symptoms, let's clear a few things. Mold versus mycotoxins. Now, mold is a microorganism that releases mycotoxins. Sometimes they're construed or used synonymously, but mold is not a mycotoxin and mycotoxins are not molds. Molds people can be allergic to, and many people are. It's estimated somewhere between 5 and 20% of the population have mold allergies, but we're not talking about specifically mold allergies. We're more specifically today going to be focusing on the mold toxins and the debris that mold produces. These things are not alive. They can't be killed. You can't spray them with antifungal agents and kill them. They are structures. Once they're produced, they can stay in the environment and they can linger for years. So they're very, very hard to break down. This is exactly why people can do mold cleaning or mold remediation and still have problems, because they didn't deal directly with the mycotoxins. So now that you kind of understand the difference, when we're talking about mold poisoning or mold toxicity, predominantly we're going to be referring to mycotoxin poisoning or something called mycotoxicosis. Okay, so a little bit more differentiation with mold and mycotoxins. You can be allergic to mold spores. You can have non-allergic immune responses to mold and mycotoxins. And you can also have inflammatory reactions to mycotoxin exposure that cause or contribute to disease. This is sometimes referred to as mycotoxicosis, meaning that the mycotoxins directly are interacting with your body's immune system, creating an inflammatory reaction that causes damage to your organs, to your tissues, and it's that damage that accumulates over time that manifests or expresses in a variety of different ways. And so we could basically say that mold toxin poisoning can contribute to chronic underlying inflammation, and chronic underlying inflammation can cause a lot of different types of problems. And that's what makes this so confusing for so many doctors, is that mold toxin illness can mimic many types of diseases because of the underlying inflammatory process. Now, with all that being said, if that goes on long enough, you can become immunocompromised or immunosuppressed, and that's where it really gets dangerous, because once a person's immune suppressed, then the mold in their environment can start to colonize their body. And this is another area where people get mold and mycotoxins confused. So if we think about it in three main ways, you can be allergic to mold itself. Those are the mold spores. About 5 to 22% of the population has a mold allergy. Now, beyond that, you can have an inflammatory reaction to the toxins that molds produced. Those toxins can cause systemic inflammation in anyone and in everyone if the dose is high enough, long enough. Thirdly, mold can infect your body. Once you're immunocompromised, mold can start to grow on you and in you. Classic example of this is mold growing in the lungs, forming a fungal ball. There's a name for this. There's a type of mold called aspergillus that forms what's known as aspergillosis, and that is sometimes confused as cancer. We commonly see mold growing on immunocompromised patients in people getting chemotherapy or other cancer treatments or HIV treatments, but if somebody's living in mold long enough, the immune compromisation can allow for that mold to start growing on that person, creating a much more dangerous situation. When mold infections start growing in your tissues, the mortality rates can be quite dramatic. And so it's something you definitely want to catch before it gets to that point. Okay, let's look at this study. You can see here, this was a study done over 5 years where they took 7.9 million IgE tests for 17 fungal species and 1.6 million patients from 0 to 85 years of age. This is one of the biggest studies ever done on trying to identify the prevalence of how many people are actually allergic to mold. And so what they found, you can see here, 22% of patients were positive for at least one fungal allergen, 13.7% were positive to at least two. So those are big numbers. If we look at the general population and we try to make that extrapolation, it basically says is a lot of people have mold allergies. Now, mold allergies are most commonly linked to respiratory symptoms, stuffy nose, congestion, mucus production, watery, teary, itchy eyes, coughing, wheezing, sneezing, the classic allergy that so many develop asthma over. It's estimated that mold plays a role in millions of cases of asthma annually. So mold allergy is an important context to understand, but unfortunately, as I mentioned earlier, this is where a lot of medical doctors take a hiatus away from wanting to understand mold. So this is mold allergy. Now let's get into mold toxicity. If you look here, this is a document from the EPA directly. We're talking about mycotoxins can enter the body through the skin, through the GI tract, or the respiratory tract. Mycotoxins become airborne or aerosolized on substrate material, adsorbed onto dust particles or spore mycelial surfaces, or as an intrinsic part of spores or mycelial fragments. Therefore, the toxins are carried on a wide range of particle sizes with different degrees of penetrability into the respiratory tract. Bottom line is, mold toxins can be absorbed through food as you eat. Mold toxins can be absorbed as you breathe, and they can be absorbed directly through the skin. And I think that's the one that you really want to understand. They can go through your skin. So if you're in a moldy environment, those mold toxins do have the ability to permeate through.